With that, welcome you inside this edition of Big Ten Today, presented by Gatorade. Rick Pizzo, Jake Budd. Jake, we're at that point in the season, nearly halfway home, where teams now have to deal with not just the opposition, but they're tired, they're getting banged up, you're going to the second string. Now we kind of see where rubber really hits the road inside league play.
Yeah, this is a really important game, and I've seen people say, hey, there's no Oregon Penn State. Well, you don't get that type of matchup every single week, but there is some really important matchups, some great matchups this weekend. And as I was going through the prep, just a side little nugget, how about the quarterback play in the Big Ten Conference this year? I mean, seriously, we might have 2 first-round quarterbacks taken in next year's NFL draft, Dante Moore and Mendoza from Indiana. Maybe Drew Aller, too. I mean, we got some great quarterback play in this conference.
And you're going to see a couple of really good young quarterbacks this weekend. Washington, Maryland in College Park. That's where we start today with the big story presented by Gatorade. Something's got to give. Maryland is unbeaten in 2025. But it's hard to believe the Terps are 0-9 coming off bye weeks under Mike Locksley. Huskies have lost 5 straight conference road games. Protection will no doubt be a key for UW. Struggled last week against OSU's pass rush and now faces the #1 sack exchange in the country. We'll get to that matchup in just a little bit, the Washington offense against the Maryland defense. But I want to start with Demond Williams. I understand that Washington lost last week. Certainly no shame in hanging around until the fourth quarter against Ohio State. Whether you're at home, whether you're on the road, I think when you have a quarterback like Demond Williams who can hurt you in multiple ways, a true dual-threat quarterback, you have a chance to beat anybody anywhere.
Yeah, and I go back even to last year where there was so much excitement about Washington bringing in Will Rogers, the veteran, and that was going to stabilize this. It was a heavy turnover after Washington went to the national title, but immediately there was whispers beginning about this talented young freshman at the time, Demond Williams, and what he could be. And then later in the season, as he got more and more opportunities and got to start, you said, wow, this guy really is special. To start the season, it's been a confirmation of how special he is. And to look at the Ohio State game, Rick, I thought Washington played much better than the final score reflected.
Agreed.
This is a really dangerous offense. The key here is going to be the chess match. What Ohio State has on defense, very few others have. They have the antidote to an extremely explosive and fast quarterback in Demond Williams. They have Arvell Reese. They have Caleb Downs. They have elite athletes across their defensive front. Who is going to be that guy for Maryland? Maybe it's Daniel Wingate, who is an athletic linebacker, a key piece of Maryland's defense. But Ohio State had the plan, particularly in the low red zone, where Demond's legs really come alive, to counter it. Maryland has not seen a quarterback like what Demond Williams is.
Showed you those Maryland sack numbers. It's against less than elite offensive competition, and you just can't believe that they're going to bring the house every time, because if you bring the house, that allows Demond Williams to either be one-on-one with a linebacker if they employ a spy, or perhaps get into the open field, something you don't want to deal with. For Maryland, it's a little bit of the flip side, because Malik Washington has also been phenomenal. He has amazing arm talent. He'd rather throw than run. Washington is expected to have Takario Davis, their lockdown cornerback. He missed last week's game against Ohio State. But I think this is a great chess match. You have Ryan Walters, the DC for Washington, trying to deal with a talented wide receiver core and a really good young quarterback in Washington.
You know, I just can't wait to see both these quarterbacks play. And Malik Washington, there was an article ESPN dropped the other day ranking every quarterback in college football, and they put Malik as the 48th best quarterback in college football. I'm like, you guys just must not have seen this guy play. And meeting him, talking to him at the camp tour, I'm like, wait a second, you're a true freshman? This guy's mature beyond his years, carries himself with great leadership and composure, and then that shows up on tape. A guy that is mature behind his years, does a great job of taking what the defense gives to him with the checkdowns, but then you've seen on some of these plays a massive arm to take the top off the defense. But when you think about the chess match, last week what I saw Washington do was they started to implement some 3 safety looks to try to confuse Julian Sayin. It gives them an ability to mix coverages, drop a safety down in the box for run support. You have more of those hybrid athletes that give you just flexibility from pressure and coverage standpoint. What a huge test for Malik Washington. It's going to be the best all-around defense that he's faced all year.
Certainly helps to be at home, let the crowd on your side. but Ryan Walters can dial some stuff up in the secondary. That game, 3:30 Eastern. Jake will be on the call right here on the Big Ten Network. Another really important game that is not between ranked versus ranked or teams that we expect to be in the college football playoff is Michigan State and Nebraska, but two teams under their current head coaches trying to get back to championship contender status. I know Nebraska had a lot of rest here, but the last time we saw the Huskers at home, they struggled against Michigan. This becomes a situation, and I hate to use that phrase, must win, because it's so early, but we're awfully close for Matt Rule.
Oh, no, I would say that this is a must-win, and I believe Matt Rule, and you listen to the players talk, how important it is for them to respond after that Michigan loss, because look at the context, too. Cincinnati's been phenomenal. Like, that was a really good win to start the season, and I just think about the fork in the road, kind of just the split in time here. You know, say Nebraska, for whatever, if they lose this game, the disappointment that would come with that because of the expectations coming into the season. But say you win this game and say you improve upon the things that Matt Rule said were areas of focus during the bye week. Tackling, trench play. Can they get the run game going, particularly when Emmett Johnson isn't in the game? All of a sudden, if they look like the Nebraska team we expect them to be, we're right back in that conversation of maybe they could sneak into the playoffs. That's what's at stake. And the same is true for Michigan State, though. 3-1. I mean, this is a massive opportunity for them. I believe the last two matchups between these two teams have been decided by one score. So these are two programs that go toe-to-toe in duel, in fight. Going to be a great game.
That black shirt defense going to have to figure out what to do with a running quarterback. Bryce Underwood chewed them up on the ground.
Yeah.
Now you have Aiden Childs coming in, a guy who is arguably a better runner than Underwood. May not be a better overall dual threat quarterback, but you get him out in space, he is really tough to take down.
And that's why it's a perfect test for what Matt Rule said. You know, a lot was made about Nebraska's run defense coming out of that Michigan game, and people were maybe taking shots at the defensive line, but Matt Rule said, no, it takes all 11 to have great run defense. And he's especially right when you're talking about a rushing quarterback. That certainly takes all 11. Tackling in space. When a quarterback's out in open grass, you don't get the benefit of being able to funnel a running back in between the tackles. There's a ton of space. We know Michigan State's playmakers are great at breaking tackles. So this is a true test for what Matt Rule said they worked on all throughout the bye week. And from all indications, he said that this was the best week of practice that they've had. Dana Holgorsen complimented the practice. And just to go back to Nebraska's offense, Rick, I believe Dylan Raiola is the least talked about, in a sense, most disrespected of the Tier 1 quarterbacks in college football. He's been outstanding this year. He's been the engine and driver of that offense, and yet we like to nitpick and talk about, well, maybe he looks like Mahomes a little. I don't care about any of that. The film, the play, the stats, the leadership, the way the other 10 guys respond to his play, I've been really impressed with Dylan.
I would just say there's a little bit of the Drew Aller aspect there. You can show me all of this stuff. You got to win the big games. When it comes down to it, you have to win the games that your team needs you to lead them to victory in.
Fair.
I would qualify this as one of those games for Dylan Raiola and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. What about the cannon? Hey, if Brett Bielema needs to get his team's focus after back-to-back top 25 showdowns last 2 weeks, he can just cue up last year's game against Purdue. Boilermaker team would go on to win exactly 0 games in the Big Ten, but they took Illinois to overtime, and the Illini finally escaped 50-49. And yes, the cannon is on the line once again in another Big Ten rivalry matchup. Illinois is the favorite. We understand that. They come off that massive win over USC, another walk-off field goal this time from David Alano. But this defense has been good at best. And now you face Ryan Brown, who has been the real bright spot for Purdue, the quarterback for the Boilermakers early in the season. To me, the returns have been way above expectations.
That's where, when you talk about football being a game of matchups, that is exactly where I go with this game. And it's when Purdue has the football. Ryan Brown's been outstanding. It looks like the Purdue, when we would call them the Spoilermakers, they would always have a dynamic offense that would just scare you to death. We've seen the trick plays show up. They put up a ton of points on Notre Dame, playing great defenses. The offense finally has an identity again, and they're going to attack the exact weak point in the question of Illinois' defense, which is the secondary.
The story that Illinois' offensive line wrote last week was one of the most undervalued stories because offensive line doesn't get a lot of love. They got chewed up against Indiana. And I think they took it personally because they went into that USC game, Jake, and everybody was talking about the fact that the Trojans were more disruptive on the D-line. They were faster. That was the advantage for USC. And the Illinois O-line owned that game.
I was nervous for him, honestly. I mean, last week I was wondering what the game plan was going to be for Illinois. I mean, if you can't protect Luke Altmaier, when he's protected, is one of the great quarterbacks in college football. He's outstanding. They have an ability to hurt you in the short, intermediate, deep throws. But the offensive line has not been able to consistently protect.
Can't hurt you if he's on his back.
Exactly. The coaching job, we've seen some excellent coaching adjustments and coaching jobs. This is going to be another one for Brett Bielema because they're steering that ship right back into this is one of the more dangerous teams in the conference, potential to make the playoffs.
Illinois, Purdue for the Cannon right here, Big Ten Network, Saturday, noon Eastern. Our friend Joel Klatt reveals his personal top 10 on the weekly and now has the Big Ten at numbers 1 and 2 with Ohio State and Oregon starting to make this a little bit of a trend. Klatt also with Penn State still inside the top 10 despite that home loss to the Ducks. Dave Revson has more with the man himself.
And we are joined now by Fox Sports lead game analyst Joel Klatt. Joel, let's run through what was a great Saturday of Big Ten football a week ago. Oregon, Penn State, of course, was kind of the centerpiece game. The Ducks managing to pull it out in double overtime. What's your biggest takeaway on the Oregon side? We'll get to Penn State in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, they're ahead of schedule. This was supposed to be a bit of a rebuilding year. And listen, I know Dan Lanning would say we don't rebuild, we reload. And I understand that. And they've recruited at the top end of the sport. They constantly are in the top 5 in the transfer portal. In fact, if you look at just like average player rating, in a lot of cases, they're number 1. So they felt like they were going to be great, but we hadn't seen it. Let's face it. They had a lot of youth on the field. They had a rebuilt offensive line on the field via the transfer portal. Freshman Dier Hill, who looks tremendous. 2 corners that are both freshmen, a redshirt freshman and a true freshman, and a quarterback that had never really started in an environment like that. And they're facing a team with a lot of experienced players, and they're ahead of schedule. There's no other way to put it. And I will tell you this, the calm and confidence that Dante Moore showed in that environment was staggering to me. Really was. You can tell that he prepares as well as anybody. Will Stein has told me that, by the way, their offensive coordinator, that he's as good in preparation as anybody that he's had. But then it's also his ability. Did you notice it didn't matter the situation? It didn't matter if it was 4th down. It didn't matter if it was 3rd down, 3rd and long, 3rd and short, 4th and, he was unfazed and unbothered. Second overtime makes probably the best play he made all day long because denied Dennis Sutton is unblocked right in his face, and he just calmly protects the football, scoops underneath him, gets over to his right, and throws a touchdown pass. Like, this guy's phenomenal, and I think that this team is going to generate a lot of confidence from a win like that. That was an emotional win. You could tell at the end of the game the way that Dan Lanning reacts. So from Oregon's perspective, I think they're ahead of schedule, and there's a lot of young guys that got massive experience in that environment. That'll pay dividends for them moving on.
Now, it's pretty remarkable to do that, as you say, in that environment with 1 returning starter on offense and 4 returning starters on the entire team. It really speaks volumes to the amazing coaching job that they have done. On the other side, with Penn State, needless to say, we have a bit of a theme developing in not being able to close out these games against top 10 teams. We can talk about what happened, but I honestly think, like, from a Penn State fan's point of view, you're looking at your schedule right now and you're saying, okay, what happened, happened. But we've got to try to make the college football playoff, either have to beat Ohio State or have to beat Indiana, probably, right? Those are 2 top 10 teams. Can you maybe get in with 3
you're not
losses?
getting in at 9-3.
Probably
like
not.
That.
Probably not.
Right.
Okay, so what do they need to do with this offense, Joel, to get it to a place where it can win at least one of those games?
Yeah, so first off, I want to preface this by saying, like, I'm a big fan of Andy Kotelnicki and James Franklin. And, to James's defense, even though he took full, responsibility and said that, hey, like, this narrative is not a narrative, it's factual. And yes, the numbers are factual. However, I would just say, if I look at the regular season games that they have come up short in, and so up to Saturday, it was 14 in a row dating back to 2016. We've talked about this a lot, right?
Yep.
And so that's the 15th. But of those 15, this was the only one of those games dating back to 2016 that he was both the higher ranked and favored team. Okay, so this one feels different. I think we would all agree with that because it felt like, well, this is the time, and if not now, then when? So now they come up short. And here's what they have to do. And I think they need to take a page out of what now their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, did a year ago at Ohio State. And that is have some competitive integrity. What does that mean, Rev? Well, that means that you've got to evaluate yourself with an insane amount of honesty and humility. And you've got to look at yourself structurally, philosophically, everything, and say, okay, hold on. What's going wrong and how do we fix it? I'll just say last year, after the Oregon loss for Ohio State in the middle of the year, they changed defensively. Philosophy, their structure changed. They wanted to feature their players and their players' skill sets better. They wanted to change the rush so that their players' skill sets were better used. And that defense became the number one defense in the country after giving up a lot of points on the road to Oregon. Well, I think that they need to do a similar thing with this Penn State offense. This Penn State offense right now, there is a really good scheme, and then there's some really talented players, but I don't think that the scheme and the players are fit. Okay, so the scheme needs to feature the players. That's not happening right now. Drew Aller's skill set is not a great fit for exactly what they're trying to do with Andy Kotelnicki. Now, I'm not saying you need to change Andy Kotelnicki. I'm saying Andy Kotelnicki needs to develop some things structurally and philosophically to take advantage of what Drew does best. What he does not do best is the short area RPO point guard style offense because he doesn't have quick enough feet and his release is not quick enough. So because of that, the ball is out slow and it's always behind players in the short intermediate routes, back shoulder constantly on those in-breaking routes, and those become incompletions. Where he does excel is when he is intermediate or down the field and he can step into or be in rhythm in the pocket. And so all of a sudden they come out down a couple of scores, and what do? They go to that element to their offense, and he looks like a different player throwing the football down the field. That needs to be more of a feature rather than just a wrinkle in what they're doing offensively. And if they do that, I do believe that they can improve to a point where they could win every game that they play from this point on. But if they don't change that philosophy or at least evaluate themselves with true integrity and honesty and humility, and if they try to do the same things again, they're going to have trouble in those games because the offense is not a fit for the personnel as we speak.
And you've got a chance here over the next couple weeks. You've got UCLA and Northwestern, and no disrespect meant to either of those programs, but they're not at that level consistently right now. So maybe Penn State can experiment a little bit over these next 2 weeks and then be,
and I would just say a disclaimer, right? That doesn't mean that the offense is bad.
Right.
We're talking about like the last 0.5% of the mountaintop. Yeah. You know what I mean, Rev? Like that doesn't mean that this offense can't be successful, not put up a lot of numbers, which they can, but you're not out there to beat UCLA and Northwestern. I hate saying it that way, but that's, you and I both know it's like they were preparing for a season where they want to go win a national championship, win the Big Ten. Well, that's rarefied air. The last 2 national championships came from this conference. The best teams in this sport sit in this conference. The top of college football sits in this conference. So you've got to be the best. Well, to be the best, you need the last 0.5%. And that's what I'm talking about, this last 0.5%, that fit. What do you feature within your offense in order to get the best out of your players?
And to your point, teams get better during the course of the year. You cited Ohio State last year. I will give you an example of a team that we've seen get better this year. We saw get better in 1 week, and that's Illinois. I mean, it's pretty amazing. You were in Champaign for Big Noon. I mean, to go from 2 rushing yards to 171, to go from allowing 7 sacks to allowing 1 in the span of 7 days. What did they do with their offensive line to get it so much more competitive against USC and to be successful after a week where Indiana, frankly, made them look silly?
So let me, I'm sorry, I'm giving you all these prefaces. I'll just say, watching the film leading up to last week, I'm going to be very transparent with everyone here, and this is not meant to disparage. Watching the film leading up to last week, I thought genuinely there was no way Illinois could beat USC. I don't say that often, but I think that it makes the point of what we're going to be talking about here. The film didn't suggest it at all. Duke absolutely annihilated Illinois' offensive line, even though Illinois won the football game. Indiana annihilated Illinois' offensive line and won the football game going away. And so I'm coming into this and I'm like, hold on, this film, the defensive line for USC is active. They're long, they're aggressive. They've got 16 sacks on the year, tied for most in college football. I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't see it. I thought that USC was going to win fairly handily because of the offensive line of Illinois. And yet, the reason that the Illini won was that offensive line. So what happened? What happened? Exactly what we're just talking about right here. Some real competitive integrity, honesty, maturity, humility, all of these things. Barry Lunney, the offensive coordinator at Illinois, he sat with me on Friday, and for the first time that Friday, I thought to myself, oh, okay, wait. Illinois might have something, because he admitted to me, he said, listen, we're not good side to side. We've tried to do that too much. We're going to feature direct runs because that's what our guys can do. So it's not what Barry Lunney wants to do at coordinator per se, like side to side RPO system, quarterback counter, all these different things. No. What do our guys do best? Well, let's let them do what they're best at. Direct runs, downhill runs. And what did? They came out with Fagan, who's a 255-pound back, and they ran right downhill at USC. And the offensive line played their best game by a factor of 10 during the course of this year. And what was it? Did they change something? Did they practice something different? No. The play caller allowed the players to do what they do best. That was it. And it was remarkable. And I got to tell you, I've got a lot of respect for Brett Bielema, Barry Lunney, Aaron Henry, because they clearly did a lot of soul searching, and the team that we saw play USC was just vastly different than the team that we saw play in Bloomington the previous week.
No doubt, and I'm with you. I didn't see it coming either, so we were both a little bit surprised.
Probably a little bit too honest there, right?
I mean, look, you've got to say what you were thinking, and again, you studied a ton of film, and that's what you saw. For me, it was just a matter of watching those two games, in our green room and just saying, man, I don't see how they stand a chance here. But again, give a ton of credit. I think the mental game is huge, but as you say, the physical game and the scheming part of it was enormous as well. I want to ask you really quickly about your game this week, Michigan and Wisconsin. We've talked a lot about the Wolverines, you and I have to this point this year. I'm not sure we've really talked about Wisconsin. It's obviously not going great. Injuries have been a huge part of that. But why can't Wisconsin run the ball? And what are they going to need to do in this game to be able to do that and to try to make this game competitive?
Long answer, and I'm going to try to make it as quick as I possibly can. When Luke Fickell got the job at Wisconsin, they tried to go air raid offense, and that was a real departure from what Wisconsin had been philosophically forever, dating back to Barry Alvarez. Well, that's a really difficult change to make, and it never materialized. And now they're trying to change back into a team that can feature a more balanced, pro-oriented, run game-centric type of offense so that they are not reliant as much on great quarterback play as maybe they were trying to be over the last couple of years. So offensively, they're struggling because of a transition, and it's a philosophy transition. Now, I think it's the correct transition, and I hope they get the time in order to do it and execute it over the next year, two, maybe even three, because it is going to take time to develop the offensive line. But what they do well is stop the run. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Rev, I know they're not great offensively, but they're number one in the country stopping the run. And if there's one element of your team that better be strong to face Michigan, it's stopping the run. I would not be surprised if Wisconsin gives Michigan some fits early in this game. I really won't be surprised at all because the matchup suggests that that's going to happen. And then the question will be, can Bryce Underwood throw them out of it? And we're going to see. I think that there's going to be a moment in this game, in particular in the first half, where Underwood is going to have to be in a pass-first situation, and we'll see if he can develop through that. I can't wait for it, really.
Well, we are looking forward to it as well on Saturday, big noon. Obviously, Gus and Jenny on hand with you in Ann Arbor. Enjoy it, and thanks as always for your time. Appreciate you, Joel.
You bet, bud. Have a great day.
Time now for your Gatorade Big Stat, which focuses on the big game struggles of Penn State, specifically the Nittany Lion offense in the loss to Oregon. As good as the D was against the Ducks, PSU was outgained by nearly 170 yards and failed to execute the explosives especially in the pass game. It's not just about the X's and O's, though, as we return here, Rick Pizzo with Jake Butt. It's also about the mental belief. And right now that has to be a block for Penn State in these big-time games. They don't have that kind of game this week. They head on the road to face a UCLA team that is winless and struggling as much as any team in the country. But mentally, if you're James Franklin, how do you handle this week, and what do you need the approach to be? Because you're not just thinking about UCLA this Saturday. You're thinking about running the table to get to the college football playoff.
It's for Penn State, it's all about them individually and as a team and as a unit. And I was trying to think of an analogy to just summarize what I've seen with Penn State, and they remind me of like a jazz band. You know, in a jazz band, there's like a bunch of different instruments. There's a saxophone, there's a bass, there's
This is not at all
trumpet.
where I thought you were going in terms of analogy.
Hear me out. Tell me if this makes sense.
I'm down.
Individual,
I like jazz.
individual, and then good jazz, it all comes together. Bad jazz, it doesn't work. There's just a bunch of individual pieces. Right now with Penn State, they feel like a bad jazz band where there's someone over here, someone over here, someone over here, someone over here, and it hasn't yet come together, and that's penalized them. It did a little bit late in the game against Oregon. Why? They reduced the gimmicks. They got more into a simplified offense. Let's get downhill. And why I say that is against UCLA, if I'm Kotelnicki and if I'm James Franklin, I'd come in with a condensed playbook. I would say we're going to run power right, power left. We're going to run counter right, counter left, and we're going to run duo, which is basically just a vertical downhill power without the polar. And say, you know, Joel talked about it, the body language of Oregon, the confidence and passion that they played with. I have not seen that from Penn State. They almost, it's a disappointed or sad body language, like they're carrying the weight of the expectations. We've used the analogy of Ohio State coming off the Michigan loss last year. When they took the field against Tennessee, they took the field with anger in their eyes to send a message to the rest of the world. That's really what I'm hoping to see from Penn State this week. Simplify the playbook. Offensive line, get going. Punish people for doubting you. Singleton, Allen, go out there and have the best game of your career. And, I was thinking about this too. With the gimmicks and the motion, when you talk about the Dairy Queen with the Blizzard, it's vanilla ice cream with toppings.
The amount of things that we're touching on right now, we got jazz music, we got Dairy Queen blizzards.
Kotelnicki says that he describes the offense as a blizzard, right? It's vanilla ice cream with different toppings. That's how he describes his offense. The issue with that is it actually hurts your ability to have explosive plays. Explosive plays happen, particularly in the run game, when you're predictable, but you execute. You want UCLA to expect to run, have everybody up at the line of scrimmage, but you block it so well that suddenly there's a lane and you can break through that initial wall, touchdown. So that's where I think like subtle, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to completely change your offense, but let's simplify it and say, we do have one of the best offensive lines in college football. We do have one of the best running back duos in college football. We got a great quarterback in Drew Aller, especially off play action when he can use his big arm and throw to receiver 1, 2, check down. That's where it's just a subtle tuning right here for Penn State's offense that I'm looking to see, and suddenly they'll be right back on track.
And it's in LA, which is really the only place in the world that you could look on a football sideline. It wouldn't be that strange if we had a guy playing an upright bass eating an M&M Blizzard.
Thank you for that. Way to bring it home, Rick.
Thank
you.
Joel and Dave touched on Wisconsin, Michigan, two teams seemingly headed in opposite directions. We know Michigan can run the football. We know they are what Penn State would like to be. Physical, believe that they're stronger than you, bigger than you, can bully you into the ground. The one question, do they have a wide receiver or wide receivers that can consistently beat coverage and take the top off? You think this is a game where we might find out?
Yeah, well, that's, when you think about the bye week, it's much more advantageous for your young guys because it is a sprint. Andrew Marsh, the wide receiver, is the one I have my eyes on. Obviously, Bryce Underwood, the quarterback. But you get there on campus in January, you're suddenly doing a college course, and everything's moving fast. Then it's spring ball, you got NIL, it's summer, fall camp. Holy cow, we're into the season. And a bye week is a chance to just catch your breath a little bit. And they need a wide receiver to step up beside Donovan McCulley. I think Samaj Morgan is a nice piece, but Andrew Marsh has the potential to be a true wide receiver 2 and eventually wide receiver 1. If I'm Chip Lindsey and I'm Sharon Moore, I put in Andrew Marr. I want him to play every single snap offensively and say, we want you to get your mistakes out of the way now. We want to see, maybe you don't make any mistakes. Maybe you play the best game of the season because we need you on the road at USC and at home against Washington. This 3-game stretch is going to reveal so much about what we can expect from Michigan this season, and they're going to need some of those young guys to step up. Their entire secondary right now, the DBs, true freshmen, right? So they're relying on young guys, but this is a team with playoff potential.
I think it also reveals a lot about what the future could hold for Luke Fickell, because you can't go to Ann Arbor and get blown out after what's happened the last couple of weeks. Not after the loss to Maryland, not after the way that things went down against Alabama. It really didn't look great in those 2 non-conference wins either. This is a big game for Fickell, the staff, and the future, I believe, of Wisconsin football. Do have 1 minute to touch here on Northwestern. Yeah. It's a non-conference game against Louisiana Monroe. Wildcats got the conference win last week against UCLA. Looked like they were trying to give it away in the second half, but they did salt it away. Now, this is a game that you don't just have to win. You got to blow Louisiana Monroe out of the water.
And it's kind of a similar thing. When you come off that UCLA game, it looked like Northwestern was going to blow UCLA out of the water, but it was the self-inflicted wounds, the middle 8 clock management and decision-making. If you're Northwestern, you want to take the good things that happened last week and build upon it. You want to eliminate the self-inflicted wounds. There's a path for them to get to 6. It starts with winning this weekend.
It's a rocky path.
We're not sitting here saying that it's not possible.
No, Purdue's possible.
Right.
Potentially Nebraska.
Yes.
Don't love the rest of these matchups. Maybe Minnesota at Wrigley.
Right. I mean, Illinois, that's a rivalry game, like who knows what happens there. I called a game 2 years ago that came right down to the wire. I mean, anything can happen in the game of football, but it starts this weekend, and our confidence in what Northwestern can do will depend on how they look this weekend.
And that game, again, right here on the Big Ten Network, that is a 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 local time kick for the Wildcats.
Jalen, thank you so much for making the time. It is great to see you. I got to start with, I love your nickname. They call you Chop. So can we start there? Where'd your nickname come from? What's the origination of it?
It used to actually be Pork Chop back then. My pops gave it to me when I was younger. I was kind of always had fat cheeks. So like they used to grab my cheeks and it was just Pork Chop. And then it changed to Chop as I got older. I started slimming down a little bit and it just changed. And it's just been the same since.
So let's talk about Illinois. They've been on a kind of a roller coaster their last 2 games. I know that this is a totally new team for you guys. Have you gone back and watched last year's overtime game between Purdue and Illinois?
Yeah, I watched it. It was a great game, but they still came up short. But it was a great game. Ryan got after him. Mondo scored his first touchdown in overtime. But, we didn't come out on top, so we got to come out on top this year.
Great answer. What's interesting is that Devin Mockabee, your running back, there's something that it feels like he has a little something extra when the Cannon Trophy is on the line. He always plays really well against Illinois. Just for you, what's it like blocking a path for him and having a guy like that behind you?
Man, Mock a great dude. When he get that hole, he gone. And if he not gone, you going to feel him when you tackle him. So, our biggest emphasis is getting him to the second level. When he get past that second level, let Mock be Mock, and I'll go to Mock train right there.
The Mock train. I love it. All right. So we talk about, Purdue and their game day traditions and just all of the history within the program. What has stood out to you the most the first few Saturdays that you've gotten to play at Ross-Ade Stadium?
The fans, man. The fans, like crazy atmosphere. And I done been in some crazy atmospheres, but I would say the fans here, they will take over the whole game. Like third downs, we winning, we up, we down. They here to stay. They're not going nowhere. You're gonna hear them. And then also I would say, man, the grass. I love playing on grass. Like it's some of the best grass I done played on actually. Like the grass.
I know the grounds crew. The grounds crew is going to love this interview.
Yeah, I'm a big dude. I need to feel that grass, not that turf.
I love it. What was your reaction the first time you saw the world's largest drum?
Oh, huge. I want to hit it one time though, just to see for myself, to experience myself. But no, the drum is huge and it's loud. Like I never seen nothing that big. Like especially not a drum.
That was what I was going to ask you is, I know that I've never seen a player take a swing at it, but just what have you talked to anybody within the band about what that looks like?
I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna get close. We gotta catch the dub this weekend, and maybe I'm gonna go up and ask him. Let me hit it one time.
The chop hitting the drum, I think, would be something, a moment made for television. Jed, I've always said that every team should bring an offensive lineman to media day every year because you guys are the best mix of insight and personality, and you have proved me right yet again. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We appreciate the time, and best of luck on Saturday. Have fun.
Thank you for having me.
Give some props to the Michigan volleyball team. Wolverines knock off number 10 Minnesota in 4 sets on Wednesday night. Not just a top 10 upset for Michigan, but its first top 10 takedown since 2021. Allison Jacobs leading the way offensively with 20 kills for the Maize and Blue. The Discover Big Ten Volleyball Challenge debuts this month, involves all 18 conference teams. Each school will play 5 midweek matchups that count toward their respective totals. The team with the best overall record at the conclusion of those matches will be named the winner of the inaugural Discover Big Ten Volleyball Challenge. And speaking of those matches, 2 for you this evening here on the Big Ten Network. First, it's 7th-ranked Wisconsin at home against Illinois, followed by a top 25 showdown between Purdue and UCLA. We serve up the coverage starting at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific time. And a reminder, don't miss wall-to-wall coverage of Big Ten basketball media days. We have the women's side covered on October 8th, followed by men's hoops on the 9th. Big Ten basketball media days only right here on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. This time of the year, a lot of bye weeks for teams. You don't see them early in the year, don't see them once we get into November. But some key teams are on byes this week that will actually meet next week, including Oregon and Indiana on that collision course set for Eugene. Do you have any questions for Dan Lanning left to answer after what we saw Oregon do in State College?
I don't. I seriously don't. Maybe it was the run defense, but I mean, they were just outstanding. And maybe it was how prepared are the young guys going to be in a big moment? They're relying on a lot of freshmen. They were absolutely prepared on both sides of the football. So maybe that is the question, is what does Dan Lanning do this week, understanding his team has checked every box to start the season? How does if he's a master motivator, how does he ensure his team stays focused and somehow takes that next step? I mean, they're chasing small percentage points at this point, Rick. But, the bye week for them, it's just like anybody. They are pretty healthy, get even healthier, get fresher, and then add in some new wrinkles because that is a huge titan of a matchup when the Hoosiers come to town.
I will say, if you need any motivation, not only is Indiana top 10, but Dan Lanning can go back and show all the quote boards for all the games that Indiana has played since Curt Cignetti got there in the big-time games. Well, Indiana can't win this one. I know they've been good, but there's no way that they're able to beat Michigan. Okay, I know they've been good, but there's no way they beat Illinois. They've won those games. They've won those games handily. So I flipped the script to Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers, also on bye this week, after overcoming what was a really sneaky matchup. You throttle Illinois, then you have to go to Iowa City. Came down to the fourth quarter last minute. They got it done. What's Curt Cignetti worried about this week?
Well, I don't think there's anything he's worried about. But when you think about your bye week, a lot of people would say, hey, Indiana, extra time to scout Oregon. And that's true, right? You could scout Oregon. There's plenty to scout there. But there's also an element that is self-scout. So now you have this big chunk to start the season. If I'm Cignetti and I'm Indiana, I would look through all my offensive and defensive tape, and I would try to find tendencies. Where are we vulnerable? Where, because Oregon is a big team that they study tendencies. When Thieneman had that interception to close the game, he said, we knew this is a play that Penn State likes to run. We had seen indicators that told us they're going to get to it. So knowing that, Cignetti knows Oregon is going to be up on their tendencies. Find your tendencies through self-scout and be ready and anticipating to throw the counterpunch. Use your tendency breakers in this matchup because you'll need it. These are just two great football teams.
And Cignetti has done exactly that each and every time Indiana's taken the field since he took over before the start of last season. USC is an interesting one for me on bye because there's 2 ways you could look at that loss to Illinois. We shouldn't have won anyway. The Illini fumbled twice inside the 10-yard line going in for a score. Or We gave the game away late because Illinois kicked that field goal to win it as time expired. How do you think Lincoln Riley focuses during this bye week on not just the past, but the immediate future?
Well, I think the first part for them, they're really beat up. So get healthy. This bye week comes at a great time, especially before they host a physical Michigan Wolverine football team. But when you use your time here, if I'm Lincoln Riley, I would do a massive study. Every single coach is going to get together. We're going to sit in a circle. We're going to watch every single one-score game this year and figure out what are the common denominators of the teams that consistently win these close one-score games. And then I would do a self-scout and see what is the common denominator of why we're losing these one-score games. They have the quarterback and the playmakers in the scheme. I believe if they have the ball in their hand, they're going to be able to find a way to win it. But what is the reason they continually come up short in these games? That's where this bye week you have some breathing room and some time to do that self-scout. They're going to be in some close games down the stretch of the season, but they got to tip the scales in their favor.
Same thing could be said about Iowa. Lose to Iowa State, 54-yard walk-off field goal. You lose this past weekend in a game that you feel like you had a really good chance to win against Indiana. I know the Hoosiers are remarkably talented, but Iowa had a chance to close the door and they couldn't. There is also the question of Mark Gronowski's health and whether he's even been healthy at any point so far in his Iowa career.
Yeah, so and Tim Lester spoke to the media and said, I think he said, yeah, it's a little cloudy right now with Gronowski. I took that as a good thing because I was concerned it might be serious. And if it was serious, you would expect them to say, yeah, we're not going to have Gronowski for an extended period of time. So this bye week comes at a great time for them to get healthy. But then the question literally is, all their resources and time comes to what can we do if we don't have Gronowski? Or if we do and he's limited, because his legs are a big piece of it. What if he can't run? That's what this bye week's about.
I know at the start of the year, Iowa was kind of a college football playoff sleeper for a lot of folks. That dream probably doesn't exist anymore, but they can certainly be a spoiler. And you know this team, as they always do under Kirk Ferentz, will get better as the year goes on. For Jake Butt, I'm Rick Pizzo. As always, appreciate the hang with us here on this edition of Big Ten Today.